Welcome to Maverick Mind, the podcast. If you are a creative soul, really ready to unlock your potential and design your path to freedom on your terms, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Ellie, designer, entrepreneur, yogi, and coach, and consider this your home to dive into the mindset, energy, and strategy to fast track your way to success. I'll also introduce you to some of the most creative, visionary, and maverick minds I know to share their insight, to feed your curiosity, and to inspire your next creation. I'm so happy you're here, so let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Maverick Mind, the podcast. I'm so happy to be back here with you all and so excited to dive into this week's episode. This week's conversation was just so rich, so inspiring, so energizing, so soulful, and there's so much value that I think will really help a lot of you out. So this week I am joined by the very, very lovely Jillie Johnston. Jillie is a worthiness and courage facilitator. She's also an international speaker. Her motto for life is, or for her business is, I don't create brave people, I help brave people see how brave they really are. The courage you're seeking is already within. She's just guiding you to tap into what is already there. Currently, at the time of recording this, she has worked with over 5,000 people around the world to help them see their worth, tap into their innate courage, and trust themselves fully no matter what. She's also done many other things. She's a woman of so much soul and so much experience, and she has moved to Peru. She started a non-profit out there. She started a movement for women called Love Letters to Yourself. She started dabbled in the fitness industry and then brought all those things into a coaching and facilitating business that she has right now. And she also traveled around North America with her husband in a van for 4 years. She's been to Alaska. She eloped on a glacier. She's done so much, and she has so much soul and so much experience and so much wisdom to share with the world. So this conversation is just really, really amazing, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. But before we dive in, I just want to take 1 second to remind you that if you rate or review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to me on right now, just send me a screenshot of that rating to Instagram at Maverick Mind Co, and I'll enter you in with a chance to win one 60-minute free coaching session with me. In that coaching session, we can go into whatever you want to go into, really. Mindset, your business strategy if you have a business, but also I'll help you guide you around creative blocks, authentic expression. Use me how you want to use me, and it's just my way of saying thank you so much for supporting the show. So again, if you review, just send me a screenshot and I'll enter you in with a chance to win that. But now let's dive in. This is Jillie Johnston. Okay, welcome Jillie. So excited to have you here to speak on bravery, vulnerability, and everything in between. A big warm welcome to Maverick Mind. First, I would really love to hear kind of your backstory on how you came to specialize in bravery specifically.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to talk to you and to have an opportunity to talk about bravery and worthiness and authenticity. And it's something that it's been I don't even want to say a thread or a theme, but it has been my whole life, right? Of this search and this seeking of like, who am and what is my voice and what is my truth. And so I've called myself a recovering people pleaser and a recovering perfectionist. And so growing up, I was a straight A student. I never was grounded. I was so afraid of getting in trouble all the time, right? Like I was the good girl in every sense of the word, and was the peacekeeper and the diplomat and the protector of everyone's emotions, and learned how to manage everyone's emotions in order to keep the peace. And in that, I learned how to I was like a chameleon, right? And I could fit into any situation and be what anyone wanted me to be. And in that, I never really learned who I was. And so that is like, kind of like the epitome of people pleaser. And I was a really competitive athlete. I played Division 1 soccer through university, and it, like, was just like this ambitious, driven, always knew how to set a goal and reach it. But I always knew how to set a goal and reach it when it was someone else's goal, because I never knew what I really wanted. And I remember there was a soccer coach that was like, "Hey, like after like a summer break or whatever, he was like, how was your break?" And I was like, "Oh, good. I joined these 4 teams and I did my conditioning packet and I read these 8 books and I volunteered here and I did this and I did that." And he's like, "Really, what did you do for you this summer?" I was like,
Hmm.
"Well, what do you mean? Like, I did all these things." He goes, "No, all that was for everyone else. What did you do for you?" And I couldn't answer. And then I started looking at my life of like, what have I ever done for me? I couldn't answer that question. And I was like in my early 20s. And so that really sparked something inside of like, wait a second, like, who's Jillie? Like, Jillie knows who she is in relation to everyone else and their expectations and what they want her to be. But what about me? Like, what do I want? Who do I want to be? And so once I got to college and like, really decided, like after senior year, after I was done with athletics, after I took a break from everyone else's dream and said, but what do I want? That kind of sent me on this journey of like what it means to be brave, to go against what other people want and what other people expect of you, and to disappoint people, and to find what my truth was, even if it upset people, even if it rocked the boat, even if it meant it ended friendships and I felt the disappointment that they felt, because I'm also an empath and a sensitive. And so this has been like such a huge part of my journey, which in that I realized how many people deal with that, how many people struggle with that, how many people I can identify with my journey and not knowing who they are or what they want, and then being brave enough to rock the boat and let other people feel disappointed in them has been huge. And so then, like one thing led to the other, right? From a decade of being on this journey of like people coming to me and saying like, you seem so free, you seem so joyful, you seem so at peace, I want what you have. And that's kind of how it started. I was like, well, I can't teach you what I have, but I can help you find your own, which is like how to let go of these expectations, how to find who you are, right? And how to be brave enough to choose yourself and your own dream and your own peace over other people's comfort. And so, like, very high level view, that's kind of how I got into like worthiness and bravery and authenticity and vulnerability, and having the courage to, I say, heal publicly, like out in the open, and share my journey out in the open so that other people don't feel alone when they do it privately.
Yeah, incredible. There's so much within that, and I think there's so many things in there that are so common for people in general to struggle with, but specifically people on a creative path, because it's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? Like, a creative path is very internal, it's very introspective, it's very personal. But the minute we try and share it, we all go into that people pleasing tendency, and that can make creative people not share their work, or it can make us create things we think people will like in order for them to like us. And somewhere down the road, then we become unfulfilled because we're not sharing our authentic voice, or we completely get to that point, I suppose, similarly to where you did, where we don't know who the hell we are anymore. We don't know what our style is, what we whether we create even something that we even like or want to make. And it's a really common trap for creative people to get into, I think. And Can you remember, like, at that time when you had that, like, big, powerful realization, what some of the sort of first steps you did to discover yourself after that?
Yeah, I think, it's so funny because there's just repeated patterns, right? You never actually like heal something completely. So it just
Oh, no.
continues to come back in cycles. And and if you don't really dive into the work and explore why that happened, or why you are the way you are, or how can you choose something different, right? It's going to show up in entrepreneurship, it's going to show up in your work, it's going to show up in all these other ways. And in that moment, like, I mean, I was so young, but I started being like, well, what is something I've done for myself, and what would be something that I do for myself? And I think it was really, I really got to explore it like after I was done with soccer, and I didn't have to keep running, and I didn't have to be in athletics, and I didn't have to do something in order for it to pay for my tuition, or have to keep my parents happy, or all of these things. And so then I got to say, like, okay, so what do I enjoy? Well, I love running, I love moving my body, I love being in nature. But it got, once I got out of the have tos and got into a space of like, wow, what do I get to do now, right? What do I get to do now? And what still brings me joy? And so it's coming from a place of like curiosity and awareness of, if I do this, like, does this bring me joy? Do I like this? Do I need to take a break from it for a while? And so I started just experimenting with like dating myself. I feel like it's kind of cliche, but just like, okay, do I like running? Do I like dancing? Do I like art? Do I like writing? Do I like all of these things that I don't have to share or do for anyone else, that I can just keep for myself and let it be sacred for me? And so then it was, and then like slowly, I'm not, you might not know right off the bat, but it's just continuing to try things and tweak things and experiment and say, oh, let me be curious about this. Let me experiment. Let me try this thing. And today it might work for me. Tomorrow it might not. But it's just being open to that piece of it, right? And then catching yourself of like, you're not going to break the expectations of other people, or break the what you hold for other people right away. And so it's going to be there. And so you just know, like, okay, when am I falling back into shoulds? When am I falling back into have tos? When am I falling back into keeping the peace? And usually your body is going to tell you when that is, because guilt comes up and resentment comes up and shame comes up, and panic of like, what are they going to think? Or are they going to get upset? And letting that know of like, oh, these are when I know that I'm falling back into old patterns, so let me move back into a place of curiosity.
Absolutely, and that curiosity is really the root, or I suppose the essential ingredient for creativity. You have to be curious and kind of live in this almost playful state, which is something I think anti to a lot of what we're taught we're supposed to do when we start to adult. we're supposed
Totally.
to like we're supposed to like know what we're doing and win at things and do things right and get succeed. It's everything must be a success. Nothing can be a failure. Whereas actually, the key to being truly creative is allowing yourself to fail, is to try things and then maybe it not work out, or test out some new way of creating because for the fun of it, and then it turns into something either that's really worth the bin or something that's incredible.
Totally.
So tapping into that curiosity is really, I suppose, also the antidote to things like perfectionism, which I suppose is the same, similar thing to people pleasing, because, well, it's basically of the same line. When we're in that perfectionism space, we're only really trying to control how other people perceive us in a similar way.
Yeah, for sure. And I, it's really about like redefining failure, because if you're so afraid of failing, which comes back to this perfectionism, comes back to this idea of self-worth, that if you fail, what are you making it mean about yourself? If you put something out there and people don't like it, what are you making it mean about yourself? And like begin redefining that and saying, hold on, like, if I can't shrink or grow my worth, if nothing can change my enoughness, and how I feel about myself, then all of a sudden I'm liberated to like do and try things and like let them fail. And like the more you fail, the better you're gonna get. And I think of so there's a really great book called Hidden Potential, and I think it's by Adam Grant. But in there, I'm pretty sure he talks about like Steve Martin, the comedian.
Oh yeah.
And like Steve Martin, he failed. Like he was in LA and like was on stages. He got booed off stages for like 20 years. He was like a complete failure. People wouldn't book him. He finally got this big gig, and a critic was like, no one should ever book this man again. He was the worst comedian I've ever heard. Okay, like a critic, a public critic said that about him. And he just kept going, right? And he kept going until finally, like he was refining, and he did suck. Like he did suck in the beginning, but he kept getting back up on stage. And I think I met someone the other day who saw the Beatles in Germany at a bar before they were famous, and she was like, Jillie, I saw the Beatles before they were famous, and like everyone was looking around being like, wow, I can't believe people gave them stage time. They were so bad.
Wow.
And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, they were so bad before they ever got good. But how many times do we not let ourselves be bad at something? And like the expectation. And so, like, what if instead of like trying to be perfect, what if we're like, actually, I'm going to try to be bad at this? And I'm going to let myself be bad. And then I'm just going to keep refining. And I'm in this for the long haul. What if I was in this for the long haul, no matter what, no matter how long it took, and no matter how many evolutions and additions I have to go through to get there?
Absolutely. That requires quite a radical amount of, I suppose, trust and patience as well. And I think for a lot of creative people who are very visionary by design, I suppose, we're always we always kind of get to this point where we feel like everything we create is not good enough because it's not as good as it is in our mind. Um,
Totally.
so like whatever you actually produce in real life is already a failure because it's not what it is exactly in your head yet. But I think it's getting into again that playfulness of I'm gonna get there at some point. Like
Yeah.
it will look like that at some point. Spoiler alert, when you get to that point, your vision is bigger already. So you're still chasing that vision, but that's kind of what makes it exciting. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that we get so stuck in the idea that, you know, the next painting has to be the get us to the big show. The next sale that or the next product that we create has to create the $1 million business. The next song I write has to be my big hit. But if you look back to a lot of quote unquote successful people, I suppose well known people, it took them a very long time and a lot of bruises and a lot of failure to get to anything that resembled anything good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, this is where we get to have these real conversations about what it really takes, because on social media, what you're seeing and hearing are overnight successes. You are seeing and hearing like, okay, how I can take creatives and help you make $1 million business, right? Or how I can help you get to six figures, or how I can help you get that next hit song, or how I can get you found, or stop being the internet's best kept secret in 12 hours. Like there's like all of these gimmicky, quick selling things that feed into the fear side, and then we believe them, and we keep seeing them, and we keep seeing them, and we keep seeing them. So of course it's going to create more evidence in our brain, and of course we're going to believe it. And yet you're not seeing the behind the scenes of how long it took people to get there, right? And like how a lot of these people don't have their own 6 or 7 figure businesses, how a lot of these people haven't even gotten that best like top hit song, or had that huge gallery show, or sold a high piece painting, or a lot of them haven't done that. They're just trying to make money off of your fear and you not feeling good enough. And I love these spaces because we get to say like, there's nothing wrong with you if you haven't gotten there yet. Keep going, like this is it. And I was doing So one of the things I do is like I do speaking. And so I get to go on stages and I get to like guide people through workshops and stuff like that. And my last one that I did, we were talking about like, think about someone you look up to in your life. And like, why do you look up to them? And what are the qualities? And what about their life do you look up to? And if you really look at it, I bet it's not because their life was easy or that they never failed or that like opportunities were handed to them or that their life was perfect. I guarantee you it's not any of those things. I guarantee you it's the opposite of those things. That you look up to them because they kept going, because they pivoted, because they never gave up. And so, what if the people in your life that you think are looking to you to be perfect or to be an overnight success or to get there already don't actually expect that of you? What if they just think that you are amazing and inspiring and incredible because you're being brave and haven't given up yet and giving them hope that they still can do it too?
Absolutely. That's so powerful and so true as well. I think that most of the people that we admire, whether they're people that we know closely or whether they're people from we know from perhaps afar, we we hear stories in spaces like this on podcasts or documentaries or autobiographies and things, and you are really inspired more by the what we would call the low than the high, or you're more inspired by the moments where life was really hard or really shit and they somehow found a way to use that mess as their message or use that pain and put it into power somehow. But when it's your life, when it's like you're in that moment and you're living it, all of a sudden we think that because we are because it's our space, because it's our life, because it's our reality, it's somehow less than anyone else's struggle somehow, or
Yeah.
makes us
Yeah.
more a failure because it's ours somehow.
Right. And yeah, and it's easy thinking I don't know about you, but like whenever I get sick, right? Like I think that this is how I'm going to feel for the rest of my life. Right? Like I
Oh,
have a
for sure.
cold and I'm like I am never going to get better. I'm so dramatic, right? Like I am never going to get better. This is how I'm going to feel for the rest of my life. And it's the same thing of like when we have low points, when we feel lost, when we feel stuck, when we're like in pivots, which like I'm currently in a pivot. I'm currently in the messy middle of like figuring out what's next. And like it feels like it's never going to end. And so that's when it's talking to people like you, putting yourself in spaces where either they're in the arena with you. Put yourself
Absolutely.
in spaces where they're in the arena with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we trick ourselves into believing that everyone's going to judge us
Mhm.
when you realize that actually the only people that might judge you a little bit are the people that are not brave enough to do what you're trying to do. Whereas people that are, as you say, in the arena or are doing the things, they will only ever cheer you on. If you're giving it a shot, like I will be there, I will cheer for you, and I will not stop until you get there because, like, when you're in this space and you're trying to do the things, you know how hard it is and you know the internal growth that comes through it, and that growth is uncomfortable, and it's everyone here is naked and afraid. Everyone here is, in that messy middle, I suppose, or everyone here is just in this kind of a weird juxtaposition of a space where you're scared but excited at the same time, all
Yeah.
the time.
Absolutely. Which is like I created a membership a year ago and like a whole movement around like doing it scared because that's what everyone is doing. Like everyone who is like brave enough to start and brave enough to put their work out into the world, everyone's doing it scared. And when again you like surround yourself with people and put yourself in conversations like this of like I'm not afraid to say I'm doing it scared. I'm not afraid to say I don't know everything, right? And it sounds like you aren't either. And so then all of a sudden you're normalizing humanness instead of making humanness a weakness. We're like, no, no, no. Your humanness and your creativity, like that is your superpower, and let yourself be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always telling like friends or also clients that I work with that are artists or creatives that always say that thing that you're too afraid to share through your work or through whatever you're creating, that will probably be the key to your success. Whatever that thing is that you think is going to make everybody hate you, is probably going to be the thing that connects you to people the most. And it is scary to share that thing about yourself, whether it's through art, whether it's through music, poetry, etc. But I promise you, just embracing that fear and then sharing it in whatever way you need to share it, that will be the thing that connects you to people the most.
Absolutely.
Do you have any like simple tips, I suppose, or rituals that you kind of swear by that help people embrace or kind of do it scared or embrace the fear and then do it anyway?
Yeah. I think a couple things. One is first do it with people that you feel safe and trust, right? Like you have, and if you don't have like your cheerleading squad, like find those cheerleaders, find those people that are going to love you unconditionally. They're going to look at like whatever you create and whatever you put out and say, whoa, this is amazing. Like, first, do it in safe spaces because what you're doing is you're growing your capacity to be seen, right? You're growing your capacity to then grow it even more, right? So first start in a safe container where you will only be met with love and compassion and grace. And then it's going into like somatic work, right? So we have to, it's not just a mindset shift, it's also creating a sense of safety in your body as you do those things. So I talk about all the time, like there are seasons of expansion and there are seasons of contraction, right? Rubber bands aren't going to stay like pulled and stretched all the time. Like they were meant to go back and forth. So when you want to curl up in a little ball and hide, that's okay. Like that is you expanded and did something really big and really courageous. And that is your body and your nervous system saying, like, I need to be held and I need to be made to feel safe right now. So, like, go curl up in that little ball. Go and take a bath and be in warm water. Go do breath work. Go put a weighted blanket on you and just like hold yourself and hold that inner child that is so afraid of being judged or whatever your inner child is afraid of, and like reassure them that like, hey, I got you. You just did something really brave. We're going to be here for as long as you need. And then when we are ready together, when you and I are ready together, we'll go expand again. And sometimes this is, like can happen and like in one day you're good. Other times it's entire seasons. Like last year it was all about doing it scared. I did so much expansion, right? We were living in a van for 4 years. We then like rented it and moved abroad. And then I was like continuing to grow my business. I was continuing to do big things. And then as soon as we got like into our new house, like I had contraction and I had it for like 3 months, right? And sometimes it's longer than that. And that's okay. That's what doing it scared is too, is letting yourself not be productive, letting yourself be held, right? It's not just about producing and achieving, it's equally about caring for yourself and making yourself feel safe. So those are two, like, I would say tips and really important things of if you're doing something really big, do it, right? And there's nothing wrong when you have a reaction. If you have a reaction at some point you're going to, and you want to get small, there's nothing wrong with that. Hold yourself there. And then trust yourself to know when it's time to expand again.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with that. I think that again, when we maybe take that first leap to doing something scary, when you've been doing the scary thing for a while, you kind of realize that you can't be on all the time. But when you take that first leap, you think like, oh, okay, well now I'm doing the big thing. I have to just keep going up the mountain, and I can't stop because then I failed or because then I suck or something else. You get again, as we said earlier, you get all these ideas of what stopping might mean about you, what stopping might mean about if it was a business, what that might mean about your business, financially or in terms of significance, things like that. But I really think that a lot of the sanity that we have to find on this journey comes through quite radical self permission.
Yeah.
It's really being so in tune with yourself and having your practices and whatever it is that you do to get there that allows you to listen to yourself and actually honor when your body's saying, no, now I need to close for a while. I don't know when that I'm going to want to open again, but I will do at some point, because there will be, if you have that bug and you have that desire to maybe expand or do something quote unquote bigger, there will be a time that your body will want to do that again. Absolutely, because you can't. It's just in you now. But just
Yeah.
right now, the nervous system needs to rest. And this nervous system work, or I suppose listening to the nervous system, working with the nervous system, I really think is really essential to creating or living more authentically, number one, and then creating more authentic work if you're a creative too. I really think that.
Totally. Well, and like I I know for myself, like as I'm a writer and I'm a speaker and I create, like, I would say, less. I love painting as well, but I've never like sold painting. Um, but my most meaningful, my most impactful work has come in those moments where I have contracted and given myself time to heal and to feel and to process. Right through my processing is when some of my most powerful stuff is when my most powerful stuff comes through. And so it's you don't have to be productive all the time, and in the beginning, to help you feel safe, like, you want to feel productive, and that's okay. um and like letting yourself have that is like, rest can be productive. You don't need to earn rest, but as you get there, as like a bridge thought, as it helping you feel safe in rest, is like, this is also productive. This is also helping me create. This is also helping me, pull back before I launch into my business. It's all important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it's like listening to yourself, whatever works for you. Some people, it will be they need to curl up in a literal ball and rest. And other people, it might be just taking the foot off the gas for a minute. And if you're creative, it might be shifting out for a moment of creating for the sake of significance, success, or to sell something, and instead doing it for play, as we said earlier, just doing it kind of curious in terms of curiosity, or like doodling here and there, or going to life drawing classes or something that's not attached to any kind of outcome. I think that can be restful as well. But yeah, I think again, it's just listening to what helps you feel the most safe, I think, or helps your body find that feeling of rest. I mean, I don't think I've actually ever shared this on the podcast, but I used to own a fashion label, and it closed during COVID. And I think after it closed during COVID, but it was also kind of a also situational decision to close and an empowered decision to close. I kind of had this feeling like I was getting this voice in my head that was like, bottle this experience, just like put this experience in a bottle and then like at some point share it with others or use it to help other people in some way. But after I closed that business, I think it was a year, perhaps a year and a little bit more before I launched this one. And that was a whole year of me being in that space of mush. Just kind
Yeah.
of.
That
And
and
then,
how uncomfortable was that year for you?
oh my god, so uncomfortable. It was I never felt so directionless in my whole life. And at the same time, there was a part of me that didn't really care. It was like something's going to come at some point, and I don't know what that is, but it will come at some point. And it was literally in a moment, like everything clicked. I think as a creative, or I think a lot of people, especially if you're perhaps leaning towards empathetic or something like that, you absorb your surroundings quite a lot. And I think as creative, you don't realize you're doing it, but like you're picking up bits of information throughout the day, and it gets stored in your body somehow, in the nervous system somewhere. And then one day it all comes together in this sort of rush of like, that's what I need to do. Like that is it. And it's this like full body, fuck yes, this is what's happening now, and we're rolling with it, and like, let's go. I think I had that moment, and I launched this business, I think 3 weeks later, which was interesting because it actually took me 4 years to launch my first business. So from 4 years to like, I think 2.5, 3 weeks. But again, it's just knowing that at some point you're taking in all this information, and at some point you will come back. Some point you will feel ready, and it will come at some point. But it's trusting, I suppose. And trust is a brave thing.
The bravest.
Mm.
Trust is the, and trusting when there's no evidence and there's no for sure thing. Right? And it's like going back to yourself and saying, like, I got you, I trust you, I think is the bravest thing.
Yeah, it's quite like a radical act, I think, to really embrace that feeling of trust. I think um, maybe it's because of social media. Maybe it's because of the whole rise of the self-development space, perhaps, which I think is a great thing, obviously, but I think also it kind of lends us to become almost like surgeons or scientists of ourselves. We're constantly like trying to unpack ourselves, constantly trying to pick at ourselves, or put a lot of pressure on ourselves to find this like big aha moment within ourselves, or aha like massive, really impactful life purpose, I think. And I think a lot of creatives struggle with that because art specifically can feel a little bit selfish sometimes. So I've worked with a lot of art creatives who almost feel guilty for wanting to pursue this path because they think like maybe it's not noble enough or not a big enough life purpose, quote unquote.
Mm.
Um, and do you have, like, in terms of living a really unapologetic life, and I suppose this kind of going against the grain maverick life, do you have any advice or ideas or to speak on about releasing, I suppose, all kinds of pressure?
Mm. I have, so I have tied a lot of my worth to impact, right? If I'm not contributing to society, if I don't feel like I am making a big enough impact, then what's the point? Why am I even doing this? Right. And that's kind of like what I hear when you're saying of like,
Mm.
my art isn't, creating all of this, impact or financial freedom or being received this way. Like, what the hell am I even doing? And I look at programming, right? It's like, where did we get that? And is that true? And who even came up with that idea? And is it helpful? Like, is it helping me actually create more impact? Is it helping me be in my joy? Is it helping me experience life? Right? Because what it really did was it just sent me into burnout. Um, and so that was about 3 years ago. Like, I built this 6+ figure business. I was doing really well in the coaching sphere. And then I was looking around and I was like, I thought I was going to feel differently. So I'm like having this impact and I have this influence and I have this stuff. And I thought that when I got there, I was going to feel this certain way. And then I was like, I don't feel any different. Like, I'm still questioning of, am I doing enough? I'm still questioning of if I'm making enough impact. And then I started like really questioning, like, where did that come from and why? And do I want to continue living my life this way? And who gets to decide what enough is? And really, like, I just kept like pulling at that thread of, what does that even mean? And do I want that? And what if my joy was enough? And I think I heard, I think I heard it was like on TikTok or something, which I'm not on very much, but like for some reason this thing like found me. And it was like Esther Hicks' voice saying like, what's your life's purpose? And it's like, to be in my joy. Well, but what is that going to do? Bring me joy. Well, but who is that impacting? Well, my joy. And it was just all about my joy. And I was like, whoa, what if I could find evidence, and what if I could just begin working on replacing my worth with my impact to like my life's purpose is to find my joy and my peace, and like slowly just working there. And so I would offer that to anyone else who can identify with it. Is it helping you? Is it serving you? Is that where you want to be? And like, what if you were making an impact always, and that like your work will always be enough, even if it changes one person's life, and that one person is you? And what do you want to put in its place instead? Like, what if your joy and your peace was enough? And how can you begin moving the needle to letting that gauge be enough in that direction?
Yeah, totally. I think that, well, there's kind of two layers to it. There's like, you think of this big impact, and if it's not the big impact, then it's nothing. In the same way that if we're not on the big stage, we're nothing.
All of
um,
that.
and therefore, like wherever you are, your journey is not worthy because it's not the big version of that. When actually we have to embrace, I think when we're dancing with self-worth, it's in feeling worthy regardless.
Yeah.
Like you are worthy whether you produce, you're worthy whether you don't. You're worthy whether you get there, you're worthy whether you get hired to there. You
Yeah.
might feel worthy of whatever you want just from being, just by being, as you say, in that joy. I think I've heard that TikTok as well. And yeah, it is really powerful. If I can find it, then I'll link it or somewhere. Um, but yeah, I think also as creators, we struggle with the whole idea of that impact because we think of the big impact, but you don't realize that actually if you did a painting that was just you really being really present in your joy, being really present with what you're creating, it felt really, really authentic to you, and it was maybe some kind of therapeutic process towards you, helping you through a hard time or something like that. And it feels selfish to you because it's a really internal process. But you don't know that somebody won't see it and it helped them through a similar situation. I
Yeah.
think that that's probably done most literally through things like songs because you hear lyrics and they're quite a literal um, representations of a situation. But maybe if it's something a bit more abstract, we don't really see how that could affect somebody. Something that I come back to a lot is that you might create something for one reason, but somebody will see something else in them. It could be something as simple as you painting something that you think is quite random, but then they think, oh, do you know what? That actually makes me feel really peaceful when I see it.
Yeah.
And I have a really stressful life, a really stressful job. So I'm going to put that painting right next to my front door. So when I come home, I see it, and every day it's like a immediate exhale when I leave, when I arrive at my house. And like, is that not impact? Is that not service to somebody else? And even if it was unintentional, I think
Yeah.
that's a really powerful way that we connect with each other, actually, through maybe again a little bit more of an abstract way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
There's two things that came up as you were talking. One is like, what if your art, what if your outlet was like completely different than your soul work? Right? Like you get to make an impact because like you are a human being in relationship with other people. And like what if it wasn't your art? And that might like, activate some people. But like what if your art was just a bonus? It was just a cherry on top. Like you're the sundae. Like you are the
mm,
ice cream sundae. Like you are the cake, you are the substance. And then your art and your outlet is just like the sprinkles and the whipped cream and the cherry on top. But like your soul work isn't just one outlet. right? Like you don't need to have like a job or a status or even work um in order to have an impact. Like what if it came back to like, no, you are the magic, and then your magic comes through into your art, and it comes through in your speaking, and it comes through in the people that you touch. Like you are the magic. And so like that was one thing that came through that I'd love to hear your input on. And then the other one, and I haven't totally worked through this, but it's like coming up and I'm like, okay, this is probably a safe place to share it, is what if we stopped using our work and our art as like validation of our worth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's something that a lot of us trip up on.
Yeah.
And even like I think it comes in so many different layers. So many people are attach their worth to like a job title, or attach their worth to some kind of education level, or attach their worth again to maybe the success or outward success or failure. I don't like the word failure, or the outward success level of their artwork or whatever their creative business pursuit and things. And I think actually the success of and feeling truly successful within yourself, and that's that like internal freedom that comes. It's not like having, it's not about monetary wealth or cars or the things that we picture as success. Is this like internal freedom to really be yourself. I think that that is the worth. It's not anything to do with outside of us really at all. That's just all a game, really.
Yeah.
um, that's what I would say anyway. But I think also that internal freedom comes from living in alignment with your truth, which can go against the grain and can maybe not look outwardly like everybody else, which is a vulnerable place to be. And I suppose that you have really created that life that's quite against the grain, you know, traveling a lot, living in a van, living in different countries and things like that. Do you have experiences to share on living really against the grain, or maybe navigating that dance between choosing a life that's maybe not like most people,
Yeah.
and really owning that?
Yeah. So I remember when we decided, like, so my husband, we were just dating at the time. We like hadn't talked about marriage. We had been like dating for like 10 months. And I look at him, I'm like, hey, like, let's buy a van, let's build it out, and like, let's travel. And he was like, that would be awesome. Right. And so, like, within 30 seconds, we made this decision. And so then that week, I like call my parents, I call my dad, I'm like, hey, this is what we're doing. And he was like, why can't you just like get a normal job, get an apartment? Like, I don't like this idea at all. Like, why do you always have to be so different? Right. And then I called my mom, and my mom was like, you're being irresponsible. You haven't thought this out and anything. I was like, no, actually, I waited like a month to tell you. And we've thought this out. And it was almost validating that they had these responses, because I was like, wait a second, this feels so exciting for me. This is like a full yes in my body. Like, I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be challenging, but like this, I'm not meant for a 9 to 5. I've never wanted a 9 to 5. Like, I am meant for a business, and I'm meant to travel, and I'm meant to have this exploratory life. And it was such a full yes in my body that, of course, when they said it, like, that hurt, because I was like, I actually called just to share it with you and wanted you to share in my excitement. I'm an adult now. Um, and in that moment, it showed me how much work I had done to let go of what they thought, because it never made me question of if I was going to do this or not. It like had me anchor into that even more. And so I think it's, but I did so much work about like listening to intuition and getting that full yes in my body. And then when I went to them and they said, well, this is, don't support you, don't think this is a good idea. And I was like, okay, that's yours. Like, that's not mine. And then that, has kind of continued we decided to elope on a glacier in Alaska, just the two of us and a photographer and a helicopter pilot. Um, and that hurt people, right? Like right after we knew that, we were going to elope before we got engaged. And so when I called, our families again, they were just like, how could you take this away from me? How could you take my speech away from me? How could you do this? Like, I'm your X, Y, and Z. And yet what it came down to is like Robbie, my husband, and I, like, we've gotten so grounded in like, who are we? And like, what is our joy and what makes me come alive? What makes him come alive? What's honoring to him, to me, to our relationship? And when I used to ask everyone else's opinion about everything because I couldn't make my own. And I stopped doing that. And I stopped doing that a long time ago and let myself sit with my own decisions first for however long I needed to. And I began developing that trust within myself so that I could be so secure to block out the noise. So when the noise came in, I already knew for myself what was right for me. And I would say, like, that again, this is not overnight, right? This is constant work and I'm still working on it. And like, I have my own evolution and my own healing that I'm constantly doing around people pleasing and disappointing others and whatever. But I've gotten so good at like that hell yes, full body. Yes, I'm still afraid, but I know that this is the next thing for me. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, like, off the back of that, I think when you get used to listening to your body
Yeah.
and used to listening to your intuition, you can kind of play around with like the idea of, okay, well, what if I went their way?
Mhm.
How would my body feel then? Would
Yeah.
feel closed, tight, and when we're in that closed, tight state, we cannot create very well.
Yeah.
Whereas when I go my way, it feels expansive, it feels exciting, it feels true to me.
Yeah.
I think being able to dance with either or makes the choice quite easy
Yeah.
because, like, this feels like a shrinking.
Yeah.
This feels like authentically who I am and an expansion. And I'm going to choose expansion in this scenario, in this situation. But I think it's really building that connection with your body and being able to listen to your intuition and being able to, over time, trust it, I suppose. If you have some evidence of your intuition guiding you to the right place, as it always is, but if you, as soon as you start gathering the evidence of actually listening to this makes life pretty good.
Well, and it's like, I don't expect perfection. So sometimes I'm like, this is intuition. This is a great idea. And then hindsight is 2020. I'm like, oh, no, that was actually like ego, or that was actually, I did mental gymnastics in order to get me there. My intuition was really no, but I hid that,
Mm.
or vice versa. Um, and so I think, that's the other thing is like, it's not all or nothing. Don't expect perfection. Allow yourself to like try and then go back and say, okay, how did that go? What was that like? What did that feel like? What would I do next time? Uh, what did I learn? And then continue to like, it's muscle building. Just continue to build that muscle and that trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it's so worth trying rather than like keeping yourself in that cocoon, I suppose, or in that tight space of trying to fit in all the time. And yeah, it's definitely worth taking the risk and just playing around with following that inner voice once you get to a point where you can hear it anyway.
Right.
Are
Right.
there practices or tools that you perhaps share that help people to hear that voice?
I think, one of the things that you said is like closing your eyes and playing with the what if of like, what if I did this or what if I did that? And like I feel it and everyone feels it differently, but I feel like expansion in my chest when it's a yes, right? Like I feel lighter, I feel more expansive. And then when it's a no, it usually feels like dread, right? Of like, ugh, and dread. And so it's, like called a body compass, of tapping into the body compass and playing with all these different decisions. And then again, like coming from a place of, okay, I don't have to get this perfectly. I'm learning this. I'm trying this, and being that own, like, you know, graceful cheerleader of like, hey, it's all good. Either way, like try it with low risk situations of even like, what kind of ice cream do I want? Or like, what food do I want to put in my body? Or what do I want to do for my body movement today? What colors do I want to paint with today? Right? Like, do it at a very low risk where there's not a lot riding, not like which country am I going to move to, or like what house am I going to buy, like not like a very serious thing yet. And then start at a low risk and then slowly be like, okay, feel good here. This is like my new norm. And then continue growing from there.
That's such great advice. I think to start with something like as small of, do I actually really need this coffee this morning?
Right.
Or am I just doing it out of habit? Again, it's I
Yeah.
guess coming back to that curiosity. Do I like going to the gym, or would I rather go to a dance class? You
Yes.
know, it's again coming
Yeah.
back into that inner authority and listening to what is really true for you. It's something that seems pretty trivial, but
Yeah.
over time, there's like compound interest into perhaps something bigger or not, or even it'll just let you feel a bit more authentically yourself in the small things,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think the last question I'd suppose, or last thing I want to hear your input wisdom on is imposter syndrome. Something
Mm.
that I don't like to call it that name, but everyone else calls it that name. I don't really like the name syndrome
Yeah.
because it's not like a real medical thing.
Right.
But I suppose when we're trying to do the hard things or trying to go after our own on our own path, or maybe after something we perceive as quite big for ourselves, a lot of people get hit with that inner voice that tells them that they don't know enough yet, or they're not good enough yet. So do you have any advice or pearls of wisdom around dancing with that imposter syndrome voice?
Yeah. So Maya Angelou, when she had written her 11th book, she had written a total of 17. But when she wrote her 11th book, she was already an icon. She had written screenplays. She had gotten 50 honorary degrees. She was like the icon that is world renowned, right? After she wrote her 11th book, and a reporter came and said, you know, how do you feel? Like, how does it feel writing this book? And her quote was, I'm still waiting for all of you to find out that I've run a game on you, right? Like, meaning, like, I'm still waiting for all of you to find out that, like, I'm a fraud, that, like, I'm just like everybody else. And when I read that, I was like, she nailed it, right? Like, and that is so perfect because that doesn't, Maya Angelou talking about that doesn't discredit Maya Angelou, but it credits each of us of, oh, wait a second, we're still going to feel like frauds. We're still going to question, like, who am I to do this? Who am I to say this? Who am I to be this successful? Who am I to share this in the world? And we can still be icons. And we can still write 17 books and screenplays and get 50 honorary degrees, or something completely opposite. And so I want everyone to hear it's like fear and doubt don't mean not to do something. They're there. And like, what fear wasn't telling you that you're not meant to do something? What if it actually was a piece of you inside of you that says, not only do I believe that you can, I know that you can. And that is why you're afraid. That is why the doubt is coming up, because a piece of you knows that you can. So begin seeing that doubt and that who am I of evidence that, like, this is why I'm meant to do it. And this is always going to be there. And that's okay.
That is so powerful. I'm just going to say that again for the people in the back.
Do it.
That your fear and doubt is there because there is a part of you that knows that you can already. So you have to listen to that part instead of the other parts. That's so powerful. And yeah, I've heard a very similar story from Dave Grohl, you know, the lead singer of the Foo Fighters, and he was the drummer in Nirvana, like really iconic musician, also known as the kindest man in rock and roll. And I was reading his book, which is like a really incredible book. It's called Storyteller. I really recommend it to everybody. But even after all of his success, many years, he's been a success my whole life, so that's over 30 years, 33 years. He still says, I still wake up in the morning and think that today might be the last day, you know. So today somebody's going to find out that I have actually never taken a drum lesson, and I don't actually really know what I'm doing. I'm just making it up as I go along.
Totally. It's like every day is like, this is the day my luck runs out. This
Yeah.
is the day, like the
Yeah.
streak runs out. I love that.
Yeah.
That is so perfect.
Let's just try winging it for one more day.
I mean, I think he's had a pretty good streak.
Exactly. Yeah, he's had a good luck at doing that. So.
And like, look how brave that is. It's like to still what if I'm found out today, right? And like still get up and go do it. And like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna like walk on stage anyway.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That it is so brave. It is so brave. And the bravery that it takes to share that story and say, no, I haven't had a drum lesson, or I never know what I'm doing. It takes so much bravery to like put that out in the world and not say, yes, worship me, I'm a guru, everyone should aim to be me, but no, like, let me share that this is actually what's going on behind the scenes, because it's really freaking scary.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Just to own it, fully own it. It's like, it is, again, pretty brave thing to do. And yeah, also iconic thing to do.
Yeah.
The icons are honest.
And then like you're reading it and whoever else is reading the book, and then all of a sudden saying like, I actually don't have to know everything. I actually can wing it. I actually can just get up and share the thing and like mess up or whatever, and like I'll be okay.
Exactly, yeah. It's really powerful, but I guess it's power in sharing, again, as we said way ages ago, about sharing your humanness.
Yes.
Like we all think that when we get to that point where we're the big singer, when we get to the $1 million, when we get to the big business, when we get to the best-selling book, we'll somehow be some different human. Whereas, like, when you got to your 6-figure plus business, it's like, oh no, I'm just still me. I still have the same problems.
Yeah. Totally. And so now I'm like, okay, well, actually, what if instead of being like, 6 figures, like I'm like, no, I just want to be at peace with who I am. I want to be at peace. I want to be kind to myself. And like I've totally changed my version of success so that like no matter what level, and I'm putting air quotes around this, like I get to, it's like I'm still at peace with me. I still like who I see in the mirror, right? Like I'm kind to, I got my own back. And then I think like if I can feel that way no matter at what level I am, then that is what is going to carry with me, because I'm the same person regardless of what those outward achievements are.
Exactly, yeah. I think you have to, if you're not happy now, you won't be happy then. Or if you're not content, I suppose, within yourself now, or at peace, or found that inner freedom that I spoke to about earlier, if you can't tap into that now, you won't win when
Yes.
everything's perfect and rainbows and sunshine when you got it.
And never going to leave. And that's how it's just going to be from now until the end of time.
Exactly. Amazing. Jillie, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like we could chat for days and days, but I would love to leave some info about you in the whatever it's called, show notes, links to all the things, so you guys listening can find Jillie everywhere and tap into your bravery and vulnerability. I'm sure you got so much value from this. I did, for sure. So I really hope you guys have enjoyed it, and thanks again so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.